Well, folks, the whole offseason we've been waiting for the Pirates to make a move, and they finally did last night, adding Marco Gonzales. We're going to talk about that move, the results of the Rule 5 draft today, where the Pirates ended up in the draft lottery, and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, brought to you by Jase Medical.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And winter meetings are in full swing, have been in full swing. Lots has been going on. But before we get into that, by the way, folks, whoever got me this wonderful, amazing, ugly sweater, thank you, by the way. I have no idea who it was, but thank you for getting it for me. I figured I would wear it on the show today. So if you're tuning in, let me know if you're the one that got me this, because I am very, very happy that you got me this, because I'm wearing it right now, and it's very comfortable, very cozy. It is a small. So by the way, for instance, for everybody, if you guys buy me any more shirts or anything like that, make sure they're like on the medium scale, because yeah, your boy wears a medium. I don't wear a small. So it is a little snug in the neck area, but I think it looks cool enough to discount that anyway. The beanie, by the way, was my own purchase. Nobody purchased that for me. But folks, the Pittsburgh Pirates have officially made a deal that I think a lot of us can actually warrant talking about. We've seen them add Gilberto Celestino. We've seen a catcher be brought into the mix. We've seen some small things happen. But now they go out and get a guy with MLB experience. They get another soft throwing lefty in the rotation, and that is Marco Gonzales, who, of course, was a part of the Jared Kelenic trade that the Atlanta Braves made recently, that a lot of people were kind of like, hey, like, that's interesting that he's there. The Braves obviously decide to move on from Gonzales. Not even a week later, they are going to inherit some of the salary that Marco Gonzales is due in 2024, a $12 million contract with a club option in 2025 for $15 million. So what does this mean for the Pittsburgh Pirates? I think that's the biggest question that a lot of Yins are going to ask is, what does this mean? What kind of deal is this for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and what does it do? Well, when you get down to the brass tacks of the deal, it's for Marco Gonzales, with the Braves obtaining some of the money for his contract next year, and the Pirates are sending out a player to be named later. Now, I've seen the joke already. It's not Paul Skeens. It's not Termarr Johnson. More than likely, because we still don't know at the time of this recording who this player to be named later will be headed to the Atlanta Braves. But what we can probably define from it and what we can take away from it is it likely won't be a player that many people will, one, know, and two, really be all that upset about losing. And that's the kind of deals that I think we kind of wanted to see the Pirates make this offseason, with the loaded farm system that they currently have, with a lot of the position groups that they have right now being heavily loaded. You wanted to see them make these kind of deals where you're picking up a guy in Marco Gonzales who is not going to turn this team into a playoff team by any means at all. And when I say that, I'm not saying that he can't do it in a certain role, but as of where they sit right now, Marco Gonzales is not going to single-handedly take this team to the MLB postseason. And I think most of you would agree with me on that, and most of you would say, yeah, like, I can agree with that. But when you're looking at Gonzales and the type of player he is, he's going to be very familiar to what you've seen the Pirates go out and obtain in the past couple of seasons. He's a soft-throwing lefty, much like, Tyler Anderson, Rich Hill, and Jose Quintana. He's a career 4.14 ERA pitcher. Now, a lot of people, I think, did kind of panic a little bit when they saw his ERA from last year, and it was a 5.22 in 2023. But due to injury, he only pitched in 50 innings. And if you know how ERAs work, it really only takes 2 or 3 bad innings to inflate a pitcher's ERA, especially when you're only pitching about 50 innings due to injury. Now, when you look at his entire framework of who Marco Gonzales is, he was obviously drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you want to do a little bit of your history, was on those St. Louis Cardinals teams in 2013 and 2014 that were thorns in the side of the Pittsburgh Pirates in their 2 playoff appearances out of 3 from that stretch of 2013 to 2015. So plenty of experience across his MLB career. And I think that's one of the big aspects that I really liked about this trade too, is that they're not only getting a guy in Marco Gonzales who is experienced, but also has a track record of being a pretty good baseball player alongside that. You go to some of his StatCast metrics from last year too. Again, not a lot to look at just because he only pitched 50 innings, but he had an 81% chase rate via StatCast. He was in the 78th percentile in off-speed run value due to his changeup and curveball being valuable pitches in his arsenal. He loves to use his changeup, folks. Last season, he threw a fastball 299 times. He threw the changeup 245 times. So about what's the math there? About a 64 pitch difference there. About 67% of his pitch mix is his fastball and his changeup, with the curveball usually being his strikeout pitch. And you just look at all these things that you see about Marco Gonzales. He ranks highly in barrel rate. He ranks highly in hard hit percentage. He ranks pretty high as well in, again, I mentioned chase rate from last year, but if you look at his 8 seasons of work as an MLB pitcher, 5 out of those 8 seasons that he's had, he was above 30% in chase rate, which is a very, very good thing to have if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, because again, he's going to be a very familiar pitcher to Oscar Marin and his staff. He's going to be a very familiar pitcher to fans because he's going to go out there, probably give you about 4 to 6 innings every single start. Could end up being a quality start merchant, as I like to call him, where he's going to go out there, he's going to give up 2 or 3 runs to start. He's going to pitch about 5 or 6 innings. He's going to keep you in ball games and hand it off to the bullpen for the final 3 or 4 innings. That's who Marco Gonzales is going to be. Locked On Mariners mentioned to me, he's a great guy, gets a lot of ground balls, allows a lot of contact. So that's something that you are also going to see out of Marco Gonzales and his game as well. And it's very hard, again, to go look at Gonzales and what he did last year. Ironically, as well, his last start of the 2023 season as a Seattle Mariner came against this ball club right here, the Pittsburgh Pirates, when they took that wonderful trip up to Seattle and T-Mobile Park. But you look at his 2022, and I think that's where a lot of people are really going to want to see what Marco Gonzales can do, because in 2022, he had an ERA of 4.13 with a 1.33 whip, among other impressive statistics, was very consistent that season, was around his career averages. You look at his 2021, which was also another good season. You have to wonder how he would have performed if it was not due to injury this year, how his ERA and some of those strikeout per 9 and walk per 9 numbers would have looked if he would have pitched a little bit more in 2023. But due to the fact that he was injured, it's kind of tough. But to get to brass tacks on a guy like Marco Gonzales and what the Pirates are getting, he's a soft lefty who will allow contact. He has good ground ball rates and will occasionally strike out hitters because he has a 6.70 strikeout per 9 across his career. Now, are the Pirates done adding to their rotation? By no means, they are not done. There's no way they're done. I think Marco Gonzales, for me to be really happy about this acquisition, I like this acquisition a lot, but for me to be really happy about this acquisition, I think you really would like to see them still add 1 or 2 more arms to the rotation so that a guy like Marco Gonzales can be in the role that I think suits him best, which is being a 4 or 5 guy in the rotation, giving you those very good, decent starts where you're getting 4 to 6 innings out of them, eating innings up, and being kind of a bridge to an eventual Paul Skeens or a bridge to an eventual Jared Jones, or whoever else you want to throw in there, like Mike Burrows or a JT Brubaker, who should be ready later in the 2024 campaign. And I think that's the ultimate goal of why Marco Gonzales was brought in to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. And at this rate, too, if Jared Jones and Paul Skeens or Burrows or Brubaker are ready and Gonzales has put the Pirates in a spot where they can eventually either one, move them to the bullpen, or two, move on from them and at least get something for them, I think that would make this trade an absolute win. It's something that I think Ben Cherington was very happy to do. It's a risk that I think he was very happy to take. And I think Marco Gonzales could be a very valuable piece to this team in 2024 if he can go back to his 2022 self, And there's a bunch of other stuff that's been going on at winter meetings, like the Rule 5 draft that happened today. I waited to record until after the Rule 5 draft just in case the Pirates did anything wonky. Nothing super amazing, but I'm going to tell you about some of the players that they got, tell you about a certain somebody who is leaving that I actually mentioned on the show not too long ago, and more. But before we do that, folks, we are going to talk about a certain company that's going to help you empower yourself this winter to stay healthy, and that's Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for just a moment about preparing for tough situations? Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend, because thanks to our partners at Jase Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply, even ED generics for Cialis or Viagra. Jase Medical has the Jase case. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. So visit Jase Medical and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first order. And remember, Jase Medical is here to help you this winter and to keep you empowered about your physical health. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. Again, my name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me right there on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And guess what, folks? There's a lot going on today. Last night, Marco Gonzales is a Pittsburgh Pirate. Today, we have some Rule 5 additions. We also found out yesterday who the Pirates could be in line to get in the MLB draft because of where they're selecting. We'll talk about that in Johnathan Mayo's piece on MLB.com, mocking the top 10 of the MLB draft very, very early. But before we get into that, the second segment of today's episode is all about the Rule 5 draft, a thing that the Pirates have been quite involved in over the last couple of seasons, with Jose Hernandez and Yuri De Los Santos coming to mind. Another name that'll always come to mind in the mind of Pittsburgh Pirates fans in the Rule 5 draft. Of course, the most famous Rule 5 selection ever, Roberto Clemente, who was selected by the Pittsburgh Pirates in the Rule 5 draft from the Los Angeles Dodgers. It was either the Brooklyn Dodgers or the LA Dodgers. I can't remember where they were at the time. I'm sorry, I'm not a baseball encyclopedia like our pal Sully over at Locked On MLB. But he's still the most famous Rule 5 selection ever in the MLB Rule 5 draft. And the Pittsburgh Pirates this year, there were questions. Were they going to add somebody in the MLB portion again? Were they just going to kind of stand pat? And it was the latter. They did not decide to get anybody in the MLB portion of the Rule 5 draft. They did not lose anybody from the MLB portion of the Rule 5 draft. Sorry, I just needed a swig of water there real quick. But they did decide to go out and get 4 players in the minor league portion of the MLB Rule 5 draft, with the most notable, or I don't know if you want to say most notable, but the most well-known player of the group of four being Seth Beer. Seth Beer, of course, selected in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft on Wednesday by Pittsburgh. He has 43 career MLB games under his belt, most notably with the Arizona Diamondbacks, has a 208 average and a 586 OPS with 2 home runs and 12 RBIs in those MLB games. Now, when you're looking at a guy like Seth Beer, obviously, name speaks for itself. You guys know there was kind of that big explosion that he had in Arizona. Whenever he hit a home run, there was going to be free beer and this whole thing. It was a fun story in Arizona, but he's never really elevated himself to his former first-round pick potential. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think that's something that they're hoping to look for with a guy like Seth Beer. And he obviously has more experience in AA and AAA, played more there in 2023, slashed 273, 365, and 461 with 15 home runs and 66 RBIs this season. So when you're breaking this kind of deal down for a guy like Seth Beer, you're wondering, hey, what does this pickup do for the Pittsburgh Pirates? For me, I think at best you'd expect him to be a depth first base or DH piece. He can also play a little bit of the corner outfield as well, but I like him a lot more at first base or at the DH spot. But the Pirates took a flyer on the former first rounder, and we'll see what they decide to do with him moving forward. But again, I talked about the future of the first base position last week, and there's not a lot to like in the minor league system. I would probably take Seth Beer right now over some of those guys just due to the fact that he does have some major league experience, and the Pirates could possibly ignite something out of him and get something out of him that the Arizona Diamondbacks were never able to do. They also selected, and ironically selected this guy first, but I had him listed second, Phineas Delbonta-Smith, right-handed pitcher from the Rockies organization, who was their first minor league Rule 5 selection. By the way, while I'm talking about all this, folks, make sure you go check out Ethan Houlihan. He's on top of all this stuff all the time on Twitter. He's keeping you guys updated on the payroll. He's keeping you guys updated on service time and all that other good stuff. So please make sure to go give him a follow. I look at his stuff all the time to try to educate myself a little bit more on arbitration and salary figures and payroll and all that other good stuff. But Phineas Delbonta-Smith, relief pitcher from the Rockies organization, spent his 2023 in AA Hartford, and at 26, you have to wonder what his potential is moving forward. That's going to be the big question. That's going to be what a lot of people are going to ask and talk about when it comes to Bonta-Smith. And a 5.4 ERA won't stand out from 2023, but he did strike out 55 batters to walking 21. And folks, you guys know, and I'm a big judge. I'm a big judge on this. I love my walkout or my strikeout to walk rate. I just do. You know, I love it. I'm always going to love it. I'm always going to gravitate towards pitchers that strike out batters at a very consistent rate more than walking them. Now, obviously, they're always going to have a positive strikeout to walk rate most of the time. Obviously, in other cases, they're probably not going to be in professional baseball that much longer. But I do like that 2-to-1 ratio, above a 2. I would like to see you striking guys out 2 times more than when you walk one guy. And I think that's something that Bonta-Smith is able to do because it's in his stats. It's in his career arc. It's in his career archetype. It's in his career arc. And his 219 strikeouts in his career 188 innings, I mean, that entails a pretty decent K per 9, especially out of the bullpen. And his career ERA of 3.88 looks impressive enough to take a shot. And I think that's what the Pirates saw here. Is I think they took a good look at what he's done throughout his minor league career. They took a look at his strikeout to walk rate. They took a look at what his stuff could look like, what kind of player he could look like in this system. And I think that was enough for him to get a shot. And for him as well, same thing with Seth Beer. I think he compares to Seth Beer a lot in this case. I think he'll likely be depth for the bullpen in 2024, but you never know with these kind of guys. He could make strides in 2024 in the minor league system. He could end up being a major league back end of the bullpen piece if he makes those strides in 2024, but you never really know until you at least try, and it doesn't hurt to take a flyer on a guy like this. The third guy third player selected in the minor league stage of the Rule 5 draft today by the Pittsburgh Pirates was third baseman Marcos Cabrera from the Yankees system. He's played third base throughout his minor league career, has also played a little bit of shortstop as well. A 219 average will scare most people. I will be honest with that, and it scares me. But his slugging of 386, which is not all that great, but it's not all that bad either, and 31 home runs over 252 games warrants talks of a power element to his game. And he was in high A for the entirety of 2023. He posted a 642 OPS, obviously an OPS that a lot of people would like to see shoot up a little bit. But he's only 22, still growing into his game, has plenty of time to develop and grow. And I don't know why the Yankees didn't decide to keep him or however that worked. But at the end of the day, the Pirates saw something to say, hey, he's only 22 years of age. We can see if there's something that we can ignite in him moving forward. He has plenty of room for development and growth. There's a little bit of a power element there. If you could bring the average up and you can also find a way to bring that slugging and that OPS up from last season and get some of that power element into him, maybe you find something. Now, what I would do for Marcos Cabrera, like I would do with most hitters in the system, throw him right into Greensboro, let him hit in that hitter-friendly ballpark, and then see what he can do in Altoona. Does it translate from Greensboro to Altoona? Who really knows? We saw that with Dario Lopez, who was eventually moved on from the Pittsburgh Pirates as he was selected today. Dario Lopez was a guy I was talking about potentially being a future first base option, but due to injury, due to a lot of inconsistency outside of Greensboro, I don't think the Pirates saw enough to keep him. The final selection in the minor league Rule 5 draft for the Pittsburgh Pirates was P.J. Hilson from the Giants system. He's an outfielder, and much like Cabrera, he's 22, 23 years of age and has plenty of room for growth and development. But I will say, folks, out of all the players that the Pirates selected today in the Rule 5 draft, I think P.J. Hilson might be one to keep an eye on and a guy that might fly under the radar for this team because his 2023, albeit was a step back from his 2022 where he had a 309 average and a great slash line, but his numbers did dip considerably. But to say his numbers dipped considerably, and then to also say in 2023 he had a 704 OPS, which is not at all horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. That's numbers that you like, I think, folks. And there are some warning bells that would ring a little bit to see those numbers dropped. But he still managed 10 home runs and 45 RBIs in 80 games. He also had 12 stolen bases. He's a little bit of a speedster on the base paths. And in 80 games, those are pretty solid numbers for me. And with the right course of development, surely he could become a valuable depth option for this team down the road. Again, he's only 23, plenty of time to develop, plenty of time to figure it out. Could eventually, again, be a depth option later down the line. And those are the guys. You have P.J. Hilson, Marcos Cabrera, Phineas Delbonta Smith, and Seth Beer, all Pittsburgh Pirates in the system now after the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft. Pirates opted to not select a player in the MLB portion for the first time under general manager Ben Cherington, so that streak is over. The Pirates also found out this week where they would be selecting in the 2024 MLB first-year player draft, and we have an MLB.com top 10 mock selection highlighting that spot where the Pittsburgh Pirates are picking, and a player that I already have my eye on very early in the draft process. We'll talk about that and more in the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here in just a moment. Alrighty, everybody, and welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. We've already talked about the acquisition of left-handed pitcher Marco Gonzales. We've talked about the Rule 5 selections in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft that the Pirates selected today. And last night in wonderful Nashville, Tennessee, Brad Paisley let the Pittsburgh Pirates know that they would be selecting number 9 overall in the 2024 draft, the lowest selection that the Pirates will have in the tenure of general manager Ben Cherington thus far. And there was a fun little mock draft already on MLB.com from Jim, I always forget their names, but Johnathan Mayo, I know, definitely was a part of it. But, you know, why not talk about it? The Pirates will be selecting ninth. Shout out to the Cleveland Guardians for winning the number 1 overall selection. The Cincinnati Reds moved up to number 2, and they were the big jumpers in the draft lottery this year. There was also a fun part that came out that said the Nationals won the draft lottery, but they were not allowed to be the number 1 or number 2 team because of the fact of the new rules that you cannot have a top 2 or 3 selection in between a certain amount of time after receiving one. So even if the Pirates would have won the lottery, they would not have been able to select number 1 overall again, I don't believe. So they slotted in at number 9. And again, the Guardians win the lottery. There's going to be a lot of fun players to talk about from now until the draft. But there's one that even MLB.com really likes for the Pittsburgh Pirates at number 9, and that is high school outfielder PJ Morlando, a guy that I have actually already had my eyes on. I have already been looking at. I've already been talking about. And he's from Summerville, South Carolina, and he's a very early mock selection at number 9 from MLB.com. He is an outfield first base hybrid, and he's already a South Carolina commit, which I find very interesting. He will be a senior going into this high school baseball season. Well, it is unforeseen if he wants to go to South Carolina or if he is going to opt for the MLB draft. And based off of what MLB.com sees here, he could be a top 10 selection. And at 6'3", 200 pounds, he has the looks of an athletic first baseman or an outfielder. He can play either corner outfield or first base and has impressive bat skills. Johnathan Mayo had this to say in his article about Morlando. He can really hit and has a track record probably as much, if not more than anybody in that class. He's a left-handed hitter, has bat speed, a lot of power, but I think he's really going to hit, and typically high school hitters with that type of profile tend to do well come draft time. Morlando is a guy that I urge all of you to research a little bit. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. Now, obviously, lots will change from now until draft time. I would keep an eye on the top 10, watch some college baseball this year, get to know some of these college players, even look up some of these high school players and get to know them as well, because it's very valuable information for Ians. Because once you figure it out and once you know and look at some of these guys, you're going to be like, whoa, I really like this guy to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. And PJ Morlando is that kind of player for me. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, again, will be selecting number 9 overall in the 2024 MLB draft, which is still a ways away. As far as today's business, they got Marco Gonzales last night. They had Seth Beer and others in the Rule 5 draft in the minor league portion. Probably going to add more to the rotation as well alongside Gonzales, but things finally seem like they're starting to get rolling here in the 2023-2024 offseason for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And with that said, folks, my name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, reactions, and opinions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can also follow the Twitter at Locked On Pirates, and you can follow this podcast on Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening, folks, and I will see you on the flip side.